as much freedom as you can give while having enough structure of society. So, I mean, there's always going to be outliers. There's always going to be people that refuse help. But I don't think now, like where we're at, most people are refusing help. I think most
Right.
people want help, but there's no help for them.
A lot of help for them. They just don't know where to go to get it.
Well, that's part of it for sure.
That information is not inherent.
But I think beyond that, there's a gap between getting help and no longer needing help, like a massive, massive divide between those two.
Oh, believe me, I know.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm sure you know more than most. I have a friend who has two kids that have disabilities, and she has to regularly let the government know that they still have disabilities that they were born with that are congenital conditions that they are never going to lose. But she has to continually fill out paperwork letting the government know, yes, my kids still have these conditions. And if she doesn't, then she loses the disability pay that she gets for them, which means that she would have to get work, which means that she would have to find somebody to keep an eye on these kids that need a lot of assistance. It's this cyclical issue where anybody on disability runs into the same issue. There's a trial work period, but it can only be for 9 months out of every 5 years. And that trial work period counts for any month you make more than $1,100. So if you make more than $1,100 10 months over the course of 5 years, then you are considered someone who is potentially able to work and make a living. Outside of that 9 month period, the limit is 1550. So as long as you don't make a penny more than 1550, then you're good. You can still continue to accumulate wealth that is on top of your disability without having to have it taken directly out of your disability. But if you make a single penny more than 1550, you have to ask for it to be reinstated.
Wow.
You have up to 5 years to ask for it to be reinstated without having to reapply for disability. So theoretically, it'll be immediately reinstated, but we know how the government works. It doesn't always happen immediately. I would assume at least a 2 week delay, and you effectively can't make more than $1,100 a month after that point, and your previous form of income needs to be terminated, because basically they're like, hey, you're making enough where you could potentially live on this amount of money, so we're not going to help you anymore. And if you're like, whoa, 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 I actually can't do that to the point where I'm making enough money to survive, then they're like, okay, well, if you can't work, you can't work, but then you can't keep working where you were working before, making the money you were making before.
Which blows my mind because with the prices of childcare skyrocketing.
The cost of rent, like rent alone,
Yeah.
is 1550 or more almost anywhere. And that's for like a one-bedroom house or a two-bedroom apartment. If you have a single kid, there's no chance you can afford rent, let alone medical expenses because of your disability. Actually, if you have medical expenses because of your disability, that can be taken out of the money that you make so that that's not considered against you, but still, that is an expense that is there. And if for 1 month they're like, oh, we didn't refill your prescription for this one set of medicine, and then you don't have to pay it that month, that can translate to you losing disability benefits altogether, because now you don't have to pay $100 for your disability, which means you're now making over the limit, even though you haven't made a penny more. Your expenses are now less, which means your taxable income is now more. So there are so many ways to lose disability when you're taking care of yourself or if you're taking care of dependents, where it makes it almost impossible to get off of disability once you're on it. It's true for almost any one of the social programs in the US. There is no exit strategy. There is no like, hey, if you can and you want to, you can get out of this assistance. There's just, here's the assistance, and you're now stuck on the assistance for the rest of your life. Because if you decide you don't want the assistance anymore, you're going to go back to where you were before you had the assistance, because there is no structure to get you to where you need to be.
And where is her family?
Well, her family has mostly abandoned her for religious reasons, because, of course, the
Okay.
Christian thing E02 abandoned family that has different perspectives.
Well, we'd all be spread apart if that were the case.
Right. Well, and that's what I mean. I'm saying the hypocrisy of people that claim to be Christians that don't live that out.
Yeah. No, 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 no. That's when I just become a human being and go, you're wrong.
Hmm. Yeah.
Y'all are wrong for that.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, there are situations where families will pull out just because you keep biting your own tail. And after a while, you can only tell somebody it's your tail until you go, you know what, you'll figure it out.
Hmm. Yeah.
But those kids, oh, that's tough. That is one of those situations, again, that would need to be assessed individually
Right.
because that is ridiculous.
Right. Well, that's why it seems very much like most government programs in the US right now aren't actually set up to benefit anyone. They're not set up to benefit the people that they're paying. They're set up to get them locked into a system, which, I
Yeah.
mean, and this is part of the push and pull of the Democratic and Republican Party, is that the Republican Party says, well, if you start giving people money, they'll become reliant on the money. And then you get the Democrats that are like, we just need to get these people off of the streets and able
Mhm.
to survive. And the Republicans are so focused on not making them reliant that they're refusing the assistance. And the Democrats are so focused on just helping them, period, that they don't focus on actually getting them self-sufficient.
Here's the thing, a lot of people on the streets, they're veterans, they're typically older. I've seen a few younger generations out there as well, but I know for a fact that my mom's generation frowned upon mental health issues.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
They have mental health issues, they just needed to get over it.
Hmm. Yeah.
So now she absolutely refuses help because she's not mentally ill.
Which, I mean, I think that's the biggest misunderstanding in the Gen X and older crowd is that it's not that millennials and younger are saying you have a mental condition that needs to be treated. It's that everybody processes information in different ways. And you might have gone through something traumatic, and the way that you're processing that information is not healthy.
Right. I was very lucky. I recognized the mental health issues that my mom had in myself because there are chemical imbalances in the brain that do become present due to genetics.
Absolutely.
Now, I recognized it in myself. I sought help. I have let my children know this runs in our blood. These are the symptoms. They don't just sit there in front of you with the sign. Your brain doesn't do that. It doesn't jump out of your head and go, hey, you're on a decline. You have to be able to know yourself.
Yeah.
And it is such a revelation and so beautiful that I was able to get help because I now live a normal life. I don't have all this self-induced anxiety that I was building up and building up and building up. And it is so much better now. I wish there was a class for that to help you figure, to help you see the signs as a child. As a child, I feel like there should be a psychology class to not just know yourself physically, but to understand yourself mentally.
Yeah. Agreed. That would be awesome. That
I
would be a
think,
really cool
and
class, especially in like early middle school. I think that
yes,
would be,
this is what is going to happen to you. These are the hormones that are going to affect you, no matter what you identify as.
right.
If you have this chromosome and you have this chromosome, this is what you're going to go through. And this is why.
Well, and I mean, even regardless of chromosome, there are men that have significantly more estrogen flowing through their body, just like there's women that have significantly more testosterone flowing through their bodies. So if everybody could just be taught like this is what testosterone does, and it could be flooding your body, and this is what estrogen does, and that it could be flooding your body. Because I mean, because then you can understand the people around you too. It's not just about understanding yourself.
Yes. Well, because I don't know about you, but as a child, I just felt like my parents were supposed to know everything.
Hmm.
And then I had a different perspective of them as I got older. And then when I had kids, my perspectives shifted because I have to constantly humanize myself to my kids. I have to constantly tell them, look, baby, I don't know everything,
Yeah.
but I will try. And then we try to figure out the problems together.
Mm-hmm.
That is something that I feel like it all goes down to what is the root problem, right? Well, how about it, Jeremy? Let's just make our own curriculum and we'll call it humanitarian classes.
I would love to do something like that.
To completely unqualified people.
Definitely not getting ahead of ourselves as far as assuming that we have all the answers. It's important to understand things and really like analyze the why behind them.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that's kind of why Mike and I have set up this Freethinkers Anonymous page, is because yes, we want to be having these discussions. We want to be bringing attention to problems that exist in the country and providing a perspective that's not partisan. But
Yeah.
beyond that, at least part of the perspective that I would love to bring to it is that this is my journey into understanding all of the problems that plague this country and coming up with solutions that are going to be evidence-based solutions on taking us in the right direction. And I think that would be really cool to take other people on that journey with us.
I appreciate what you're doing because you're doing it in a non-confrontational way.
Mm-hmm.
And you're talking to people. You're not talking down to people. You're not patronizing people. We're having a discussion.
Yeah.
And, if I don't understand something, I ask. Same with you. And I think that people need to hear these conversations because they need to understand how humans talk to each other.
Agreed. Humans that respect one another in particular.
This is ridiculous. The things that we're seeing on television and reality TV where people are just yelling at each other and that's okay. And no, it's not. This is not okay. What's wrong with you?
Yeah, and the level of selfishness, and even it's funny you bring up reality TV. Liz and I just kind of binged through The Trust. It's a reality game show where these people are given like $250,000 to split between them, and the only real rules is that every day you have the option to vote someone else out. You don't have to. Everybody can share the money equally, but they create little situations where it's like, well, you could also put $15,000 out of the trust into your own pocket, but there's some kind of a give and take for it that inspires some kind of backstabbing or something like that.
That's horrible.
Yeah, well, in the immediate groupings that happened and the backstabbing and the strong personalities, and when I say strong personalities, I don't mean strong personalities, I mean really weak individuals that lash out quickly.
Oh,
Those are the ones that definitely led the groups initially. Aside from this one guy, this is the guy from Texas. He was a farmer, ran his own ranch, was hoping to potentially be able to hire on more people to help run the farm, and had a family back home. And he just said right from the start, I am not going to vote a single person out of this unless they are the toxic one that needs to be culled from the herd. And that's what he did, start to finish, no matter how much money was thrown at him, nothing but say, I'm not voting anybody else out, aside from one time when he was like, this one person keeps creating these toxic situations, so they're gone. And that was the only person he voted out, start to finish.
Oh, wow.
And he was really vocal about it.
how about that communication?
Yeah, well, and he ended up making $30,000 more than everybody else because everybody else recognized the character that he actually had a strong personality, not
Yeah.
a forceful personality, but he had a strong personality, like in his core.
Sounds like he was an emergent leader.
Oh, absolutely. I think he would do amazing in, I would almost say in politics, but he would probably do horribly in politics because he has such strong personal standards. But I would love to see someone like him in politics maintaining those personal standards and maintaining that character. I don't know that he would ever be interested in doing that, but I think that he could do amazing things for the country if he did do something like that.
You never know. He's an emergent leader.
No, that's true. What I'm hoping for in the end is to have kind of a living document that goes through the biggest problems that we're seeing in this country, that goes through the data behind it to truly understand the source of it and to understand what's generating these problems, and then to come up with effective solutions.
So when are you going to run for office?
I, you are not the first person to suggest that. But also, I kind of feel like this would be a good platform. Like, if I ever did decide to do that, because I'm not discounting it, but if I ever did decide to do that, I would love to be able to point people that could potentially vote for me to this and be like, this is me talking to people. This is me understanding situations so that not only will they understand my perspective on things, they could also see the evidence behind why I chose what I chose and why I said what I said. And they could also see other perspectives and how I interact with those other perspectives. Because I think that'd be really cool.
I mean, really, the key,
Mhm.
one of the keys to getting people to listen to you is to listen to them. That's all it is.
Oh, 100%.
It's also the key to getting friends.
Yay. Yeah. Well, it's funny you say that because Beto O'Rourke was the perfect example of that. He was a moderate to left-leaning Democrat who was running for Senate in Texas and then eventually tried running for governor in Texas. And his primary stance, he was like, I want to listen to Texas. And Texas has hundreds, literally hundreds of counties.
Yeah.
So he spent, I think it was something like a year and a half traveling to every single county in Texas and having at least one sit down chat with people that lived in that county to understand their perspectives and why they wanted what they wanted.
Incredible. And he didn't get governor?
No, not at all, because he didn't actually listen to people,
Ah.
is what it came down to. People would say, like, well, you seem to want really strict gun control, and we think that's ridiculous. And he's like, well, he would just start towing the party line and trying to phrase it in a way that he hoped they would side with him without really understanding like what the issues are when it comes to gun control in Texas. And so we're definitely issues with his approach, even though he started out from what seemed to be a really, really, really good way of tackling it. He had his own perspective and it was confirmation bias every step of the way.
Wow. Kind of heartbreaking because for a moment I had a monocle of hope that they were trying to rise up.
Yeah. Well, and I voted for him the first time around because, I mean, him compared to Ted Cruz, it was kind of a hands down option. Like, obviously, I was not go for Ted Cruz.
Not a Ted
Uh,
Cruz fan, huh?
no, no, not at all. I don't know anybody that truly is.
Honestly, it comes down to I don't know anyone who is a fan of any politicians. It really is the lesser of evils.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. Aside from people that are just completely brainwashed. So, okay, two quick things. First thing, I was actually genuinely pleasantly surprised. The Democrats in both the House and the Senate have come up with a bill to tackle the housing issue. I think I started to mention this, but they're basically trying to come up with a bill that says hedge funds are no longer allowed to have more than a certain number of houses that they own.
Oh, they're trying to put a market cap on it.
Exactly. And if they do have more than that amount, they are taxed extremely high. And all of those taxes go toward finding people who don't currently own a home buying that first house because the government already has a system in place for helping people buy their first home. So this would balloon those funds to make it much, much easier for people to at least not be forced into renting. So I thought that was really encouraging.
Yeah, that sounds really good. I think they're going to hit a snag with trying to cap it. But you said that if it goes beyond a certain point, then it'll just be heavily taxed. That is where they're going to get around it because we're a free market country. We don't have tax, which that's a whole other episode.
So that's one of the big things for Free Thinkers Anonymous is not pushing confirmation bias, being willing to look at kind of the facts and the science behind it and trying to understand what those data points mean in the context of the whole. Because I feel like a lot of people, they'll find individual data points and then just decide what that means.
They go on Facebook for the answers.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh, no.
Yeah, I've never found a single bit of information on Facebook that I didn't put there myself, which were screenshots from government websites, screenshots from statistica.com, screenshots from like reputable scientific research papers.
So you have to go to different news
Mhm.
sources and you have to go to the extreme ones too. I'll go to Fox and CNN.
Oh yeah.
I will go to both extremes because I want to see what both sides are saying. And then
Mhm.
I will go down those rabbit holes. Don't get me wrong, I still don't understand a lot of it. And that's because that's not my profession. And I'm not going to pretend to.
Sure.
But
Well, I think for me, it's like I actually believe that Fox has better news reporting than CNN. I think the opinion pieces on Fox are nonsense.
although I really do like Jimmy Fallon, I would recommend him. He's hysterical. Like you, he brings on different people to talk. He's even had, God, what's her name? Trump's daughter,
Ivanka?
Ivanka. Yeah, he's had her on. He's had Kennedy. I can't think of her last name. He'll have her on. He'll have just different extreme people from all sides. And what's nice about that is it really humanizes them. You're sitting there going, okay, Ivanka Trump is on the other side of the door. The devil is on the other side. And I can't even look at her because it's going to rub off on me. Like that's how some people think. But hearing her speak was very different. And the same thing with Kim Kardashian.
Hmm.
I had no respect for her, none, until I heard her. I knew a person, he was running a show. He asked her to come. She volunteered her time. She was one of the first people to show up. And she said, where do you need me? What do you need me to do?
That's awesome.
And I was very much like, okay, well, I'll take that foot out of my ass now. And
Yeah. I think it is generally a very good idea to see people as people and to understand that they have their reasons for why they do what they do, and they're not necessarily as evil as they might seem. But I will say that there is another side to that where just because you understand that somebody's a person doesn't mean that you have to keep letting them do what they're doing. For instance, like the Trust show, there was a character at the very, very end of it all. Like everybody had kind of agreed, okay, the five of us, we're just going to stay together. We're not going to be greedy. We're just going to do the thing all together. And one of them decided at the last second she was going to take $25,000 out of the overall trust just for herself. So $25,000 that was going to be split five ways is now all going to her. The remainder could then still be split between everyone.
I would have voted her off.
Well, that's the thing. They didn't find out until after they had already voted.
Okay.
And they didn't know that she was the one that took it either. There was no confirmation of that.
Wow.
That is
So,
so wrong.
no, it was horrible. It was very obvious at the end who was the person who took that money. And she even tried to project that somebody else did it onto one of the other ones.
Wow.
They sat there and hugged her at the end and were super happy that like the all five of them got to split the remainder and she didn't end up voting somebody off because she did have the opportunity to vote somebody off and even increase how much she brought home more. But that person that stuck through all the way till the end would have gotten nothing. So she wasn't a horrible, horrible person, but she still did steal about $5,000 from each of them because
Yeah.
she deserved better than that. But I mean, even outside of money, looking at politicians, okay, well, these politicians, sure, they're not necessarily horrible people, but they are working in a broken system and they're not doing anything to fix it.
Trying to protect their own.
It's not even that sometimes. Sometimes it's just a level of ignorance. I mean, incompetence. Because that's one thing that I find even in the VFX industry, I'm sure every single industry has the same problem, where you have people that are super friendly and they're super nice and you love hanging out with,
Yeah.
but they're incompetent at their job. And you end up having to pick up the slack for them, or you end up having to fix problems for them, or somehow they ruin things for either you or the people around you or your industry as a whole. And that's not to say that those people aren't super fun to hang out with. It doesn't mean that they're horrible, horrible humans, but it does mean that they do not belong in the position that they're in. So people that are in positions of authority that have extremely problematic viewpoints. I don't necessarily have anything against them as far as their humanity goes, but I don't want them anywhere near a position of authority. So finding that balance is kind of crucial for sure.
Indeed, indeed. Yeah, you make some fair points.
Cool. Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
I really enjoyed talking to you. I thank you so much for having me on. I loved hearing your perspective and learning new things.